you're in front of a mirror, right?
Yeah, I've got one right next to me.
Say it.
Say what?
Say it, Jeremy.
Man.
Dude, literally, you have a mirror in front of you. You know what we're talking about. Say it.
Come on, man. You're going to make fun of me if I don't, aren't you?
The entire episode. Literally. And our listeners, yeah, they probably will too, man. Just fucking
Fine.
say it.
Fine. Candyman. 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 Candyman!
You're listening to a Brain Stew Fresh Fright review.
Welcome, all you gorehounds, to a brand new Brain Stew Fresh Frights review. I'm Justin.
And I am Jeremy.
And on this episode, we'll be discussing the new sequel to the well-regarded and highly praised 90s horror classic, Candyman. We also have, well, we did have more in store in terms of stories from Jeremy, so be prepped for that. But I just wanted to take the time, Jeremy, and immediately thank Universal for giving us the opportunity to sponsor the advanced screening of Candyman a few weeks back, and for that gigantic box of swag that they mailed me with t-shirts, theatrical posters, and those tiny little mirrors that were really cool, but no one really understood when I gave them out. They're like, what's the mirror for? And I'm like,
They're like, what the fuck is this?
dude, you know, like Candyman, like you look in the mirror, you know, like, oh yeah, sweet, and they just like would put it down. But you were actually able to attend that screening, dude. How was it?
Dude, yeah, it was amazing. So Universal, thank you so much. It was really, really fucking cool, man. I mean, it was completely packed to the brim, man. Like there was not an empty seat in the entire theater. People were just smiling, you know, ear to ear. Everyone was so excited to see this movie. In the lobby, you could hear people talking about their favorite parts from the original. I mean, it was just absolute excitement. You know, I believe that there were some studio people there. They had security there. They were like, listen, if you're afraid of the Candyman in the mirror, you should be afraid of pulling your fucking cell phone out, because we're gonna kick your ass out if you do that. Like, there will be no like warnings. Like, you pull your phone out, you're out. And they meant that shit.
Dude, that's one of the best things about doing these advanced screenings, and they have security on hand, is that you know that most likely no one's going to ruin the movie for you or for the rest of the audience, because they're there to keep people in check. So that's fantastic. But dude,
yeah, no, it was amazing, man. The best part, I gotta tell you,
I know,
not the best part. You know, the movie would be the best part, but the second best part was my buddy Bruce Rose. He showed up to the screening as well. Universal gave us some extra tickets to give out, so I was able to, you know, not only give some to, you know, fans from the podcast, but also, you know, my buddy Bruce hooked him up. And so as I was in line to get popcorn, he was like, dude, you gotta order a large popcorn. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna order a large popcorn. He was like, no, when you do, they give you a Terminator Dark Fate 10 bucket.
Dude, no shit.
I was like, what? And you know how much I love that movie.
Me too,
like,
man.
I love that franchise.
Yeah, we're defenders of that movie, so
absolutely. And the best, you know, what's cool is that I had been watching that same bucket on eBay, because I own like pretty much almost every piece of advertising from Terminator Dark Fate. So of course I have, like, in my watched list, it's like Terminator bucket for popcorn.
Dude, don't you have the life-size Linda Hamilton, Sarah Connor, and Arnold from that movie?
And Arnold from the movie. I've got advertisement from like Best Buy that I purchased on eBay. Like, dude, I've got Subway banners. I've got all the posters. I've even got posters from the ArcLight Theater that were like limited to that theater in LA. I had a buddy that sent me some of those. I mean, dude, I have like seriously every piece of advertising for that movie. So, you know, thanks to the Candyman screening, I didn't have to buy a $30 10 bucket of popcorn off eBay. I got it, you know, for $8 or whatever a thing of popcorn cost. So that was
I think
rad.
the only piece of memorabilia you don't have from Terminator Dark Fate is Arnold Schwarzenegger himself in a cage in your fucking basement.
I tried, man. He's a quick one, dude. He's a quick one.
But that's amazing, dude. Fantastic and right on that Terminator Dark Fate popcorn pail, man. Like, I mean, I used to get those through the theater. I remember when I got a bunch from the Predator and nobody wanted them. I did like a giveaway on the podcast, like, yo, you'll get like Predator swag, and like one person replied. I was like, damn.
You're like, damn it.
That ugly,
because they were like,
that ugly motherfucker can't sell anymore. I don't know, man. They're doing that straight to whatever they're doing. Hulu, I think they're doing straight to Hulu Predator movie. I know you're pumped for it, but
Skulls?
Yeah.
I didn't know it was straight to Hulu.
Yeah. It's straight to something. I think it's Hulu, but it's not. Apparently, it's not getting theatrical. Much like
dude,
the new.
You know what? Yeah, like that's becoming such a norm. Like it was just announced that the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre is going directly to Netflix. Which, like, dude, that makes 2 Texas Chainsaw movies in a row that did not get a theatrical release. Did Texas Chainsaw 3D completely kill the franchise for theater releases? I mean,
well, I didn't actually go out to see that one, which is, but I usually would have. I mean, I remember when the remake came out, Marcus Nispel's remake. I loved it, and
fucking
and
amazing.
I actually really enjoyed the prequel, to an extent and everything like that. But after that, I was kind of like, it's fine. This is something that has to be discussed, though. Is this a good thing or is this a bad thing? I think in a sense, Netflix shelling out for it is a good thing, and it also means that everyone's going to be able to watch it. And I'm sure it'll be on the charts for like the weekend of release. It'll probably be in the top 10.
And the studio probably already got their budget back from the deal of selling it to Netflix. So that's a good thing for horror. At least no matter what happens with this thing, it's not going to bomb and be a financial disaster. But what sucks is that our legendary horror icons, like, diehards like us, we want to see them on the big screen. We want to see Leatherface. We want to see Jason. We want to see, Freddy, Pinhead. And, I mean, shit, we haven't seen a Pinhead in theaters since Hellraiser 4, Bloodlines. Like, that's been a long fucking time, man. So, the last thing, Candyman, the sequels went direct to video. When that starts to happen, as well as I do that quality starts to decline, because then the studios know they can make money, but if they can just dump it on something and know that they're going to make money, is the quality content going to be there? I mean, certainly I think that horror content has really improved so much over the years that I don't feel like horror filmmakers would phone it in, if they had the opportunity to take the reins on these things now, kind of, like they may have back in the 90s. But
I think
man.
mean, honestly, it could go either way. I mean,
sure,
Netflix could have said, hey, we know this will chart for the weekend. It'll be well worth our money. And also, unfortunately, like, Leatherface isn't on the same level as Michael Myers, in terms of like box office. We know that Halloween Kills is going to come out and absolutely slaughter the box office in October. But with the way things are happening right now with the Delta variant, people are starting to take a few steps back on going and sitting in a packed theater again. So maybe that's just their mindset. Like, hey, this is a gamble. Let's just decide to get our money back. We'll put it on there. And hey, if there's interest and it does well and people like it, then maybe eventually when things are a lot more cool in terms of like audience participation again, then they'll do another one. But I guess I would be remiss, Jeremy, if I wouldn't mention the fact that right now I'm sipping back on some Sheetz gas station pumpkin pie soda mixed with vodka.
How's that treating you? How does that taste? I mean, it looks dark, a little dark. Is that? I'm guessing that's the color of the pie soda.
Well, our normal EFG listeners expect me to do stupid things like eat nightmare burgers on the air and drink disgusting sodas. And this, I'm sorry, Sheetz, I love you as a gas station, but it's probably the most disgusting pumpkin-flavored thing I've ever tasted. And it has nothing to do with the vodka because it is mixed with Tito's, which is delicious. But I had to take that sip right there because as of the date of this recording, it's exactly 6 years ago today, Jeremy, that we lost the great horror master Wes Craven, which I know is so near and dear to your heart. He's one of your biggest heroes, one of your biggest inspirations.
For sure, man. Dude, his passing, it's one of those moments. It's like an Elvis moment, right? Like everybody during the Elvis, era, they know and they remember exactly where they were when they found out that Elvis died. And that's a moment that I'll never forget is that exact moment when I found out that Wes Craven died. He was someone that I admired so much. The things that he created, changed my life. Like literally, A Nightmare on Elm Street changed my life. We have a film coming out called Fred Heads. It's a documentary about the fandom behind A Nightmare on Elm Street. And the whole story and the genesis of that movie is how that film brought people together that wouldn't have met each other if it wasn't for A Nightmare on Elm Street, and how that film changed all of our lives. And the whole film shows how this movie changed our life. So yeah, man, I'll never forget. I was in bed. It was, late, and I was going to sleep, and all of a sudden my phone started blowing up. I had like 20 people text me at the exact same time.
I remember I was one of them for sure too. Yeah.
Dude, and I didn't even open my phone. I could see the notification, and it read, Wes Craven died. And I literally, I'll never forget, I went, fuck! And I jumped out of bed, and my wife was like, oh my God, like, what's wrong? Like, she didn't know what the fuck was happening due to my reaction. And I was like, oh, fucking Wes Craven died. And like, rather than her be like, okay, like, she was like, I'm so sorry. Like, she knew how much that dude meant to me, and I never got to meet him. He was a bucket list person for me. Like, I really, really wanted to meet him. I had one opportunity to meet him, and I didn't do it. And it was one of those moments that you're like, I'll definitely get him at another point. It was difficult for me. It was the weekend after I went to the Horror Hound event that had Jamie Lee Curtis at it, right?
Oh, which was like the biggest deal in HorrorCon history, basically.
Ever.
Yeah.
Ever. Like, her attending a convention was like mind-shattering, right? And like, everybody that could make it to that made it to that. And it was 1 week to the day after that Wes Craven was accepting a Lifetime Achievement Award at the New York Horror Film Festival. And I was like, man, I don't have any time off from work right now, and I didn't go. And that decision has haunted me ever since, because I'm like, fuck, I should have just called out, and I should have gone. And our listeners are going to hear me say this many, many times over as we discuss these kind of things, but if you ever have an opportunity to meet one of your heroes, and it's something that's really important to you, you should go.
Do it.
If it's feasible, if it's feasible and you can go and you can make it work, you should go, because you may never get that opportunity again. Either A, whatever event that they're attending isn't ever going to happen again, or B, just because they do one convention doesn't mean they're going to keep doing them, because sometimes it's a one and done like Jamie Lee, or sometimes someone does a convention and they fucking hate it. I mean, dude, you can attest this. You met Michael Keaton, and from what I heard, that motherfucker did not have a good time.
Bro, that's a one and done. From my wall right behind me, as you can see in the video, ladies and gentlemen.
I can see it.
I'm one of 3 people that actually got a smile out of him for that photo, and he was not cheap, and I flew across the country for it. So I 100%, I totally agree with you. Like, take the opportunity, take the chance. If it's your hero, if it's someone that you admire so much, just do it. That in the end, that's going to be a memory you'll never forget. So
he was smiling in your picture because he was like thinking of all those new numbers that were going to be in his bank account after attending that convention.
Well, there's that, and also I understood where he was coming from in terms of what he was reacting to with a lot of the fans, expecting him to know certain things and like mentioning names that we know that this is just a job to him. But the way that I walked up to him and I looked him straight in the eyes, like turned to him and said, "This is one of the biggest honors of my entire life. This means so much to me. So thank you so much." And he looked at me in the eyes and said, "Thanks, man." And like moved closer, which meant I could move closer. That's why I'm almost touching him when I was told not to. But yeah, our listeners have heard that story in the past, but totally, dude. I remember being at the gym in my complex downstairs, ready to work out and crush some weights. And I saw the news on Facebook and I immediately texted you. And that's one of the first things you said to me was like, man, I so fucking regret not taking the time to meet Wes Craven.
Dude, I should have gone. I wrote to him and I got a response. Actually, I wrote to him a few times and, you know, I didn't get responses the first couple times, but then like when I would check, like I would see that other people from time to time were getting a response. So I was like, dude, I'm just not sending at the right time. And so randomly out of the blue one day, I went out to my mailbox and I opened, I see a manila envelope and I saw W. Craven and I went, holy fucking shit. So he signed like some 8x10s for me, some images of the poster from A Nightmare on Elm Street. He signed a couple other things and he wrote me a little letter that said, thanks for being a fan. Best wishes, Wes Craven. Honestly, the handwritten letter means more to me.
Just hearing you read that, man, almost brings me to tears on this anniversary date. Just thinking of that, knowing how smart and intelligent of a man he was and how much he appreciated the fans. I mean, the fans are the only reason why he decided to come back and quote unquote make another kick-ass movie with Scream, which reinvigorated his career and gave him that name brand recognition again. And that's the reason why I think he's so held up high as this iconic horror director today, is because he took a chance and 3 decades in a row, you know, reinvigorated horror and reshaped it. So,
dude, he put everything on the line to be a filmmaker. I mean, he literally quit a career as a teacher. His marriage, he put, you know, in the hot seat because like nobody understood why he wouldn't let it go. Like, no, you have a career, you have a life, you have a family. You can't just go off and make movies. And he said, no, I have to. This is something I have to do. I mean, if he would have listened to all of those people, we would have never gotten all the classics that we got from him. So R.I.P. Wes Craven. Thank you for everything. We love you and we miss you.
And here as I sip this most disgusting Sheets pumpkin pie soda mixed with vodka. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a quick promo break from our sponsor, Evil Tea, from the Evil Tea Company. And when we come back, we're going to hear a segment on Jeremy's adventures that have to do with... Only say his name one time, Jeremy. Just one time this time.
Candyman.
We'll be right back.
The Brain Stew Podcast is fueled by our sponsor, Evil Tea, by the Evil Tea Company. Steeped in darkness, Evil Tea brings a sharp and spooky variety of tea flavors, featuring robust and creative blends for all those tea monsters out there. Use promo code BRAINSTEW for 15% off your first order. Check out their website at evilteacompany.com to find the right blend for you.
And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for hanging out with us here and being creepy on another episode of Brain Stew, a Fresh Fright review. This is that little segment that Jeremy wants to just talk about his adventures, and we want to entertain you. We want to tell you about all the behind the scenes with Jeremy going all over the fucking planet and meeting people that have to do with the movies we're talking about. So, Jeremy, I'm not going to say his name another time. Our listeners already know what movie we're talking about. I don't want to say it 5 times. You already did that, so I already know what's going to happen to you tonight, bro.
Yeah, you motherfucker.
Well, you know.
Well, if it's not Candyman waking me up to kill me in the middle of the night, it'll be my 5-year-old just trying to kill my sleep. So, so, you know, a few episodes ago, we talked about Clive Barker and my experience with Clive Barker, meeting him the first time. So, you know, the listeners have heard my Clive Barker story at this point. Clive Barker, I fucking love you, okay? I love you. So, I'm going to talk about Tony Todd, the motherfucking Candyman. So the first time that I met Tony Todd was right before Hatchet 2 came out. And Justin, I have to tell you, admittedly, I am not a massive Candyman fan. It's just something that I remember being in 2nd grade and hearing the legend of the Candyman, right? Because the movie was coming out, kids found out about it through, you know, watching the trailer or their parents or on home video. And so I found out about the Candyman in 1992 when I was in 2nd grade. And it was fucking terrifying. I mean, I remember being in Texas at my cousin's house and us going into the bathroom. There was like, I don't know, 5 of us, like me, my brother, and
you guys actually did it.
3 cousins. We did it, man. I was scared shitless, man. So like the idea of the Candyman to me was scarier than the film that I got, I think. So it was one of those things I had a different expectation towards it. It's just, I respect the Candyman franchise, but it's just never been something that I'm like, I need to get autographs. I want to wear the t-shirts. I want to collect the toys, the statues, whatever. So meeting Tony Todd right before Hatchet 2 came out, I was stoked as fuck, man, because when Hatchet came out in 2007, slashers were all but dead. We were getting nothing but either remakes or we were getting, American versions of Japanese horror films at the time. So, like, slashers were all but fucking dead. I mean, we were getting The Ring. We were getting Hostel. We were getting...
all the torture porn stuff, basically.
All the torture porn stuff, yeah. So, I have always loved slashers. It's my favorite subgenre of the genre. So when Victor Crawley came out, I was like, fuck yeah, this is my shit. So I was stoked. I was like, oh man, like there's Reverend Zombie, aka Tony Todd. So I walked up and, dude, I'll never forget the first time that I met him. That motherfucker had the biggest hot dog I've ever seen in my entire life. And the listeners were like, this is getting weird. But I mean like an edible hot dog, I'm not talking about the Candyman's wiener or nothing like that. Like, dude, he was sitting at his table, and rather than taking, like, a break like celebrities do often at conventions and go, all right, I'm about to take 20 minutes and go get a bite to eat, and he was like, nah. He was like, there's money to be made here. Bring me a hot dog. So he had the biggest fucking hot dog. Like, it was like a foot-long hot dog. It was, like, as long as my fucking arm. And the weirdest part is that, like, he was literally, like, signing autographs, and, like, he'd stop and he'd take a big ass bite of this hot dog, and, like, dude, it had so many toppings on it that I'm like, the question became, what didn't Tony Todd order on his hot dog, right? So, like, I just imagine, like, him, like going to, a place that sells hot dogs, and he's like, they're like, what would you like on it? He's like, I'd like bits of bacon.
The hot dog, I can assure you, will be exquisite.
Relish. Mustard. Jalapenos. Like, I can just imagine, like, the list going on, and the person just, like, piling the toppings on. So I fanboyed out, and I was like, I had been on message boards and different websites finding out, like, new plot details for Hatchet 2, and when I was dropping knowledge on him, he was like, how did you know that? Like he thought, like, did I find the script? And I was like, dude, I've just read a bunch of shit online. He was like, damn, that shit's everywhere, huh? I was like, yeah, it's I'm really excited about it. So, I mean, the image of Tony Todd for me is just him shoving a foot-long hot dog into his mouth with, like, fucking coleslaw hanging out of the side of his mouth. But
that image alone is, like, more terrifying than seeing him with a hook in the coat in a fucking alleyway or in a parking garage, dude.
Helen hot dog. But so another Tony Todd story, which, like, I almost forgot about until the other day, and this is one that I was like, man, should I even tell this story? But god damn it, our listeners deserve to hear this shit.
They want it.
So
they want it. Give it to them.
They want it. If they want it, they gon' get it. So, dude, I was at a convention, and I was hanging out with a horror movie celebrity that's very well known. And we were drinking beers. We were at the bar, and Tony Todd walks up and goes, hey. And he says the name of the person that I was with. I'm not going to name drop them. And they were like, hey, Tony, how's it going? He's like, do you want some candy? And all of a sudden, in his hand, he has these caramels, right? And she was like, what is that? And he goes, they're edibles. And so the Candyman was offering weed candies to this person. And so they were like, oh, I'll take that. So they take one, and he looks at me and he goes, do you want one? And I was like, dude, I'll tell you right now, like, I've never been a fan of smoking weed. It's just not my thing, or, edibles or anything like that. I feel you,
bro. That's my thing, but I understand.
I mean,
get it.
It's not my thing. It's, I think I'm too high strung for that. I don't know. Like, I feel like I'm, like, dying when I have it. I'm like, I think my heart is beating too fast. I don't feel good. And so I was like, how many opportunities am I going to have in my life to eat a weed candy from the Candyman? So, I mean, dude, this day I had shots of liquor. I had beer, and then I was like, all right, fuck it, I'm taking a weed candy from the Candyman. So I ate a weed candy that was given me from the Candyman. So that's not something that happens every day. So I feel like that was a ride that I had to go on.
This is a story I've never heard before, actually.
Yeah. I'll tell you the full story later, but that's pretty much the gist of it.
But you're here today. You're here recording this. You're alive. You lived through it. So
I did.
The weed candy from the Candyman, the one and only Tony Todd, did not actually kill you. There was no razor blades involved or anything like that.
There was not. It made for a shit show of a night, but no, I'm here, man.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of this segment here for Jeremy's adventures. But I did want to give you the opportunity, though, because I know when we talked the other day, real quick, you know, I know how you feel about your props and all that, but I know you got something really awesome that you wanted to tell our listeners about.
Recently?
Yes.
See, I've gotten so much shit in that I'm like, man, which one are you referring to?
I'm pretty sure it has to do with John Carpenter, Kurt Russell.
Oh, the poster.
No.
The poster?
No, you're like huge, like the Thing prop you got.
Oh, dude, my display.
Yeah.
Dude, see, you just threw me off because, like, literally, I just
you got
ordered,
something else? You got something else?
I got something else.
I didn't know
yeah,
that.
Yeah.
Okay. That's always the case with you, but no.
So I just purchased a full-size The Thing poster that is literally signed by feasibly everyone that you could have gotten from the cast. It's got Kurt Russell on it. Beautiful Kurt Russell signature. It's got John Carpenter. It's got Wilford Brimley, which getting Wilford Brimley now obviously isn't possible.
Because he's no longer with us.
He's no longer with us. But getting him on a full-size poster, you know, like the people that typically got those done, they're not letting them go. So usually the most you can get with Wilford on it is an 8x10 or 11x17. So the fact that this poster it has Drew Struzan on it. It's even got one of the Norwegian guys on it. It's only missing 3 names, right? Which, dude, this was meant to be. It's missing Keith David, it's missing Thomas Waits, and Peter Maloney. Okay, which coincidentally, in a few weeks, I'm going to a show that all 3 of them. They're the only guests from The Thing that are going to be at the show. Is that Chiller? No, it's Connecticut HorrorCon. It's really weird because it's a 1-day horror convention, which I had never heard of a 1-day horror convention before, but. Dude, it was meant to be because I got this poster, right? And it's only missing 3 names, and all 3 names are at a convention that I'm going to. That I was like, dude, this is fucking fate. So I'm like, I'm really, really excited about it. I'm probably going to have one of the most nearest to complete cast posters out there. So I'm super excited about it. But yeah, man, I have some new busts. They're life-size busts from The Thing. It's in my top 5 horror films of all time. I love it even more every viewing, just like Halloween. Like, I fucking love that movie. So, there's an artist, that lives overseas, and he's a huge fan of The Thing, to where he was like, damn, there's no life-size busts from this movie. So, he's an artist, and he decided to create them. So, I have the Norris decapitated head with the tongue that whips out, you know, that it scoots itself across the floor. I have the split face, you know, that they found on the Norwegian camp. I have Blair, the dog head Blair, where his, you know, at the very end when Wilford Brimley's character, this, you know, he transforms into this dog face creature at the end of the film. And my favorite is the Norris spider head, dude.
I swear to God, man, you're telling our listeners about this. I guarantee you, if we ask them, they would demand a video of such amazing props.
I'm completely down. I'm so happy to own them, and I'm so happy that the artist, his name is Simon. On eBay, he's Doodle and Tibbs. If anybody's interested in acquiring one after we release photos and videos of him, like, I can put you in contact with him. He was super easy and great to work with, and, dude, I got them, like, a week after I ordered them, and that was coming from overseas.
That's nuts.
So,
that's crazy.
Yeah, so it's such a beautiful display in my basement, and I'm so happy. And one more thing before we get into Candyman. I'm really fucked, man. We've said his name a lot of times. There really is a mirror right next to me.
I'm almost at 5. I'm almost at 5 because I'm starting to forget because this pumpkin pie soda mixed with vodka is not handling well tonight.
Yeah, I was going to say a couple more sips of that Tito's and fucking, you and the Candyman are going to be hanging out later. I hope he likes Tito's.
Or the rest of this pumpkin pie soda.
So, we mentioned the Texas Chainsaw remake from 2003 earlier that we loved. So this past weekend, I went to a convention, Creature Feature Weekend. It was in Gettysburg. I've been to different conventions there over the years. It's a really great place to visit and go, and it's the second Creature Feature convention that I've gone to. The first one they had Tom Woodruff, which is a fucking rare name, man. So that was the first time that I went because I was like, dude, Pumpkinhead's gonna be there. Also, the guy that created the Graboids and Tremors, he did the effects on Terminator. I gotta go, man. So the one that I went to this past weekend had Andrew Byronowski, who was the Leatherface from the 2003 Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And if you guys know anything about him as a person, if you Google his name, you'll find some interesting things. He's had some problems over the years, but he has changed so much in appearance over the years that he looks like Donald Gibbs from Bloodsport and Revenge of the Nerds now. Dude, I didn't know who the fuck he was, but he looks just like Ogre from Revenge of the Nerds now. And dude, as I was in line to get my ticket to go into the convention, I see this big, huge, burly motherfucker walking through, and there was somebody cosplaying as Beetlejuice, and he made dead-ass eye contact with him. He's like, what the fuck you gonna do, Beetlejuice? And and I was, dude, immediately I was like, yo,
dude,
who the fuck
I bet you
is
Beetlejuice,
that?
if he had balls, they dropped real hard at that moment.
What the fuck you gonna do, Beetlejuice? I was like, oh my god, dude, who is this guy? Holy shit, people are just excited to be out in public again. But then when I found his table, I was like, holy fuck, that's Andrew Byronowski.
That's the guy you're about to meet, right?
That's Max Schreck from Batman Returns, by the way. Did you know that?
Yeah, dude. That's crazy.
Okay. All right.
He looks nothing like he did then, but he was a big guy then, though. He was a very big guy.
He probably hadn't gone crazy
Dad,
yet.
go save yourself. Dad, go.
Yeah, dude. So, but let me tell you again, if you Google Andrew Byronowski, you'll see some shit. Okay. People go through things, right? Okay. I was terrified meeting him because you ever met somebody that they're not doing anything necessarily mean or offensive to you, but even when they're trying to be nice, there's an aggressiveness to them that you're immediately put on edge. This guy's trying to be nice, but I feel like anything could make this motherfucker snap. So I walked up with my full-size original theatrical Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2003 poster, right? And I was like, hey, Andrew, I'm a big fan, man. I've waited a long time to get your autograph on this poster. He's like, all right, put it down. And I was like, okay. So I laid it out, and he was like, well, where do you want me to sign this thing? And he wasn't being mean, but it was just this huge fucking force and aggressiveness with him that I was like, dude, I feel like if I said the wrong thing, dude, he's actually banned from attending a lot of conventions because, he's punched fans in the face, he's grabbed people, he's done things. So a lot of conventions won't work with him because he's a fucking liability. So yeah, I was absolutely on edge getting my poster signed, and I was like, hey, can I get a picture with you? And he was like, yeah, you can come over on this side of the table. I was like, oh, that's the danger zone, but I'm coming to get my picture with you. Also
considering the fact that you're a quarter the size of that man. The girth of that guy.
A fraction. So yeah, dude, he was cool. So don't get me wrong. I'm not talking shit about Andrew Byronowski, but he's a scary motherfucker in real life, just like he was his Leatherface.
So proceed with
make
caution,
no mistakes about
proceed with caution.
Yeah.
If you're interested in meeting him, dude, that just makes me want to get my one of my Batman Returns pieces signed by him. I should have known. I knew you were going. I didn't think about it. I looked at the guest list and I was like, but
yeah, dude, no, it was great, man. I got Ted Raimi. I met, Nancy Loomis from Halloween was there. It's always great seeing her. I met Oliver Robbins from Poltergeist. He played Robbie, the son. It was great, man. It was a great weekend, but I figured we had mentioned TCM 2003, so I was like, you know what? Let me tell my Andrew Byronowski story.
100%, dude. Fuck yeah.
Yeah, bro.
So that is the end for now of the segment for Jeremy's Adventures, and now we're going to go to a quick promo break. We're going to hear from our friends at Cult 45 Podcast, and when we finally come back, I'm not going to say his name. Nia DaCosta directed it. You know what I'm talking about.
Candyman.
Fucking dick. We'll be right back.
Some podcasts are like this.
The bodies of 3 hikers were all empty, and their organs were laid out like a Sunday dinner.
And some podcasts are like this.
You know what? I'm going to tell you why having a large penis ain't always a good thing.
But only one podcast is where you can get in-depth analysis like this.
Oh, you want that to blow up in real life? Fuck it.
You're such a money slut. Take it all.
You want to turn that boy into goo into a fucking helicopter? Yeah. Fuck yeah.
Goo him up a lot.
You are now listening to Cult 45.
This is Beat 'em Down.
And I'm Random Randy Savage.
Find us on all your podcatching apps like Podbean or Spotify. And follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Or just go to www.cult45podcast.com.
Also, check out our YouTube for that sweet, sweet video content.
Cult 45, the only podcast that puts hair on your chest.
And ladies and gentlemen, we are back with a Fresh Frights review. Brain Stew, baby.
That's right. We're going to be talking about what is considered a sequel to the horror film Candyman that returns to the now gentrified Chicago neighborhood where that good old legend that terrified audiences originally began. And I can't go any further, Jeremy, without mentioning the milestone that is this film. Now, we haven't gotten into our opinion on the movie yet. We're about to get there in a few minutes, but Nia DaCosta, the female African-American director, has literally made history this past weekend in becoming the first black female filmmaker to open a picture at #1 at the domestic box office. And Candyman marks the second highest grossing 3-day weekend box office opening from a black female director. What a fucking feat, dude.
Fuck yes, dude. Like, amazing. I was so stoked when I saw that. I immediately shared that on social media, and I know you did as well. Like, that's just such an amazing milestone, and I'm so happy that not only, is history being made for a female African-American director, but history is being made with horror, right?
100%,
like,
dude.
This is huge because you know as well as I do that when a horror movie makes money, every studio sits up in their fucking seats and they go, you know what? We could do that. We could make a horror
That
movie.
door's opening. That door's opening.
How much did it cost to make Candyman 2021? Well, we could do that. So
it was like 25 million, dude. And its opening weekend, it already made 27.6 million. And that's not even talking about by the time this episode is released. I know people are still going out to see it.
I'm gonna go see it again. We'll get to that, of course. But this is great because not only are more horror films going to get made because of this, but people are going out and they're spending their money for the horror genre. You know what I mean? Like, it's so easy with these releases now to go, I'll wait for Netflix, or I'll wait till it comes out on video. But people, DaCosta and Peele, they created a product that people are having their wallet in their hand and they're like, I want this. Let's do this. In an age where people just wait for streaming. So I think that's huge in and of itself for horror.
It is. And also considering the fact that even though this is a relevant franchise, it's actually not that relevant. I mean, the original movie was the early 90s. As you said earlier on in our discussion, the sequels weren't like box office juggernauts or anything. They're mostly unknown except for hardcore fans, so it's not like they were big hits. So it is a sequel, so we're going to get into spoilers, ladies and gentlemen.
A spiritual sequel.
It's a sequel. It's a sequel, but
dude, when they had announced this movie, and it was like, all right, is this a remake? Is it a reboot? Are they going the Halloween 2018 approach? What is happening? Once I read spiritual sequel, I said, what in the fuck is a spiritual sequel?
What's that mean?
I still don't know what the fuck that means, but okay. Well, it was a sequel. Okay.
What I want to do right now, before I approach the actual review, is I just wanted to say something that I made apparent over the weekend on my social media. And whether I loved this movie or not, it's very apparent that way too many people are referring to it as Jordan Peele's Candyman. And motherfucker, it's not Jordan Peele's film. Yeah, his footprint's all over this thing. He did produce it and had his hand in the screenplay. Yeah, that brand name recognition. But it's Nia DaCosta's film, cut and dry, and when a female filmmaker has nearly knocked it out of the park with a horror film, as Jeremy rightfully said a few moments ago, it's very important to give credit where credit is due. So, listen. Think about who made the movie.
Yep.
Pay attention to the credits. You know what I mean? Like, look at the screen. You're there watching it. Just look at the names. They're being brought forward in front of you. So, just do due diligence, pay attention, and give that credit, because that means so much, especially with DaCosta and being, she's not relatively unknown, but she's still an up-and-coming filmmaker. So it's a big deal. And like Jeremy said, this is huge for horror, but it's also equally huge for female filmmakers, which rarely get the opportunity to helm such movies. So that's one thing that I know, Jordan Peele's company, Monkey Paw, said is they didn't want to go for a known horror director. Hiring someone focused safely and solely on jump scares and terror was important, but they just didn't want to take the soul out of Candyman. That was, not verbatim, but what they said in an interview, and I think they made the right choice. But moving on to our actual review, I'm going to throw it to you first. Jeremy, you got to see this before I got to see it.
I did.
Because I was hosting our Terror Tuesday screening of A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors at Alamo, Draft House DC Ashburn. Also, by the way, thanks to everyone listening now that came out to that and made that night amazing. But Jeremy was there watching the new Candyman. I didn't get to see it for 2 days later. Let's get your initial thoughts on this movie, man.
For me, being that I was not a hardcore Candyman fan, I hadn't even seen Candyman 2 or 3 until literally last week, right? So it was just never something that I was like, I'm trying to watch a fucking Candyman movie. But having, gone into this movie, I had no expectations, because other than to be entertained, because again, it's not like, Elm Street and Halloween are near and dear to my heart. Going into those movies, I have preconceived expectations. With this one, I was like, I just wanted a good film with good acting, good story, and I just wanted to have a good time. And that was what I went into it with. And man, I have to tell you that without going into the final thoughts on it just yet, I had a really great time with this movie, Justin. I thought it brought a lot of new things to the table. There weren't too many, tropes that I felt like, oh, fuck, here we go with this. You know what I mean? Horror is known for sometimes lazily introducing certain, genre-specific tropes that it's like, all right, it's recycled from, thing to thing. There wasn't a bunch of unnecessary jump scares there, or cheap scares, as us horror fans call it sometimes. Hey, I like a good jump scare sometimes.
We just talked about some of the best jump scares we've seen in a long time on our last episode, talking about the Night House. So
sure.
when proposed and developed properly, they can be very effective. But
yeah, so being that this was a direct sequel to the original, I had seen the original a few times, and so obviously I knew the events that took place before when this film took place, and I had a good time with it, man. I really enjoyed how creepy and fucking eerie this movie was, because this movie is just littered with just eerie atmosphere and fucking dread. From the very fucking beginning of this movie, it's just filled with dread. Jesus, dude, let's talk about that first scene in the movie that took place in the 70s in Cabrini Greens, right? It takes place in the same location that the original took place. And it has a little kid, Billy, also, known as William Burke is the character's name. And so in the 70s, there was a character named Sherman that lived in Cabrini Greens that would give out candy to little kids in the area. Well, come to find out, a little girl a couple towns over ended up getting some candy from a stranger that had a razor blade in it. And so all of a sudden, the police were like, well, that fucking guy Sherman gives out candy to kids all the time. I bet he was the one that did it.
What I love about this, though, and I don't mean to cut you off or anything, but I love that this is a reference to the original Candyman, which was a white father named Ronald O'Brien who actually poisoned his own son with pixie sticks. He's the original, like, the urban legend of the Candyman that was in the 1970s. This is way before Clive Barker even wrote a short story. So I love that they're, like, taking that element and automatically proposing that what we learn later on in the movie is just this kind of gentle, maybe slightly not all the way there in his head guy with a hook for a hand is automatically considered a target for being this killer.
It was the 70s. It was, Cabrini Greens was a ghetto, it was a low income housing area. So these white cops, they go, well, it's this fucking black guy that's giving out candy to people. I guarantee it's him. So they made up their minds before they ever even really knew if it was him. So Billy, he goes and, to do laundry for his family, and he goes downstairs in this really fucking creepy basement where, of course, that's where you do your laundry, in a fucking creepy basement.
Where there's a giant hole. Where there's a giant hole in the wall. Yeah, I mean, but I get it. I get it. I've been in buildings like that, so I get it.
There's a giant hole in the wall, and all of a sudden, the cops are sitting outside in their police cruiser, and they had harassed Billy on his way in, right? Because he's a young African-American male. They're white cops. They're giving him shit as he was going in. So anyway, so Billy goes downstairs, and all of a sudden, a piece of candy drops on the floor, and he looks up, and out of the hole steps this man who has a hook for a hand, but not like a violent hook, right? Like, back in the day when people were missing a hand, sometimes they would fucking have a hook for a hand. I mean, fucking, look at, what was that fucking bowling movie called?
Kingpin? Yeah. No, Bill Murray's character, right?
Yeah. So, back in the day, just like that, he had a fucking hook for a hand because he was missing his hand.
Oh, no, it's Woody Harrelson's character. Look, that's how long I've seen, a long time ago.
Roy Munson.
The Farrelly brothers. The Farrelly brothers.
Yeah. Dude, I love that movie. But so steps out of the hole this guy with a hook for a hand, and he extends his hand with some candy, and he was smiling and kind of humming as he did so, and it startled young Billy, and he screams, inadvertently alerting the police that something may be happening in the building. So what happens is Billy takes off, the police come in, and no questions asked. The police already made up their mind that he was the one responsible for the razor blade, and they beat Sherman Fields to death right in that laundry room
with no just cause. And I mean, this goes back to the opening credits, and I'm just going to get to my initial thoughts here real quick. But the opening credits, from the first frame of this movie, it's immediately apparent that they're jumping into social commentary with Billy playing with his puppets and having an African American being harassed by what appears to be, I mean, it's in silhouette, so we don't know, but it appears to be a white policeman. I have to say before we go any further, though, Jeremy, that this movie, man, a brilliant visual flair. I mean, this thing was so nice to look at. The direction is perfection with a thundering score. The transformation of the Candyman myth into a method to fight back against police brutality is very intriguing as a concept.
Sure.
As we go through this review, I'll tell you if I found that to be handled clumsily or well, as some of the themes are most definitely heavy-handed. Now, I know a lot of people have come out on film Twitter and everywhere else and said, hey, listen, have you seen the real Candyman? I think actually the first response to my blurb on Twitter at like 10:30 at night after I saw the movie was, have you not seen the original? And yes, I have. It was actually our first Terror Tuesday screening we did at Alamo DC like 3 years ago. Unlike Jeremy, I love the original. It's definitely, in my opinion, one of the best 90s horror movies ever made in terms of acting, atmosphere, cinematography, score, and all around dread. So yes, I understand the direction they took with this movie and the character, since one of the themes is gentrification. We'll go through that in a few moments when I throw this to Jeremy in terms of what he thinks of the characters. So I might as well do that right now, because I found having your characters right from the get-go be these yuppie socialite artists doesn't really inspire much sympathy for them or find them all that relatable. So what did you think overall of our main characters?
I have to tell you, probably my favorite character, outside of, I love the Sherman Fields character. I thought that he was creepy as shit and terrifying. So, like, he's my favorite character in the entire film, hands down. But outside of him, from our main players, man, Nathan Stewart as Troy, holy shit. I mean, one thing that the original Candyman films didn't really have a whole lot of was humor. Like, everything was always very...
the movie was deadpan serious the entire time.
Deadpan serious and bleak, and just, there is no levity, right? So this movie, that was one thing that I did have one expectation of, just please, like, let there be a little bit of levity in this by a little bit of humor, right? Not overkill, but just, it can't be so dead serious, and the world is such a horrible place all the time. And Troy, man, Troy was funny as shit. I really liked some from him going back and forth about not wanting to drink wine from Walgreens to, I mean, one of his lines was when they were talking about the Candyman, he said, black people do not need to be conjuring shit.
Didn't he mentioned like Postmates delivers wine or something, and I was like, holy shit. Like, but honestly, I've been that guy when I've gone to friends' houses and I'm like, bro, all you have is this beer? For real?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I should have just brought something on my own. But no, he was definitely, I agree with you that there needed to be some levity there. There needed to be like a light flavor throughout this thing. So when we get to the scary, spooky, really heavy shit, it matters more. Whereas in the original movie, it's definitely heavy from the get-go, very deadpan serious. Like, whatever humor is there is just white humor. That's like kind of random and whatever. But I have to get to our main character, Anthony McCoy, played by Yahya Abdul-Mateen. He is our centerpiece here, and I don't know, man. I think
he was okay, man.
I think he's pretty solid in the role. I think, I mean, obviously they're putting him in a very serious position here. Ladies and gentlemen, those of you that have seen the movie, you know what we're talking about. These are big shoes to fill. This is a big coat to put on and a big hook to put on your hand. How did you think he got through the whole movie? Do you think that he did a very good job, or?
I think he sold it. Absolutely. I think he did a great job. Was this a situation where I couldn't envision anyone else in the role? No. I think he did a great job, but I think there was other people out there that could have done the job just as well, but I think that he carried the film very well. I enjoyed his transformation in this movie.
Oh yeah,
literally.
It's definitely one of the best things in the movie, and I think in terms of performance, you are correct. There are a lot of people that probably could have pulled this off, but I did really enjoy the way that some of the body horror aspects in the movie. I mean, there's our moments where we're with him so often where he's alone. He's in this state of shock, or he's in this state of his own internal transformation, dealing with these things, and basically unveiling this urban legend, which we're going to get to in a moment, seems like it was buried with Cabrini Green once they tore everything down and built up these skyscrapers and all these modern housing units, where it's like these young millennials, if you will, are fully unaware of the story, thanks to Troy. When he goes over to his sister Brianna's house for this night of having some wine and some bullshitting. You guys want to hear a scary story? I mean, tell me as a horror fan, what better way to start your movie than that, man? That's like the line.
I love it.
The line. And then
all it was missing was a campfire.
Right? I mean, but I guess this is the modern version for, the urban audience, because we don't have that. I mean, even me, man. I mean, the apartment that I live in right now, and me and the wife are starting to house hunt. That's one of my number one things, man. Because you've had houses, you've had your fire pit and shit. That's so important to those of us that like grew up with uncles or, grandfathers that would sit around the fire and just tell stories, So I loved that this was kind of an analogy for that, where they're sitting around a very expensive coffee table in like $1 million fucking high rise. But
that place looked nice, man.
Definitely $1 million, if not more than $1 million.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
That's part of my issue with, like, you know, having them be yuppie socialite artists or involved in the art scene, because I know how much money comes in with that. And it's like, okay, but you want to make them relatable. You're a struggling artist. And I get that, you know, it's connected to the fact that Candyman was an artist, and we'll get there. But
I'm going to tell you right now that there is not a lot of likable characters in this film.
That's what I'm saying.
You know?
That's what I'm saying, man.
Yeah, there's really not. Like, I really loved Troy. I liked Coleman Domingo as the adult William Burke. He just had an aura about him that when he talked, you wanted to listen. And he was the one that was used to drop the knowledge on the Candyman. Well, here's what happened, and this is what happened with Cabrini Greens, and here's the lowdown about Candyman. You know, he was a plot device used to inform the audience on what had happened to Cabrini Greens with the Candyman. He was fantastic as well, and I loved his character, but man, they introduced so many unlikable characters that essentially were just lambs for the slaughter, right?
Yeah.
Like, they were introduced because we weren't supposed to like them, and they're going to get sliced and diced. And I'm going to tell you, Justin, that there is one thing that I did really, really love about this film compared to the original, is that in the original Candyman, Candyman, Daniel Robitaille would just straight up fucking off anybody that got in his way or the way of his target, which was Helen, right? So it didn't matter who it was. He was fucking them up. He was killing them just to torment Helen in the original film,
yeah,
right?
That's right. He didn't discriminate. He didn't discriminate against who he killed.
No, in this film, however, all of the people that got killed was a situation where they kind of deserved it in some shape or form. So I thought that was interesting.
Also, they're all white, but I'm just saying.
Yeah,
that's just
true.
a basic observation. The movie does have those deep sub-themes, as well as a very strong visual lack of, about the gentrification of urban ghettos. We see it throughout the movie. It's constantly thrown in our face. And I would have liked it if the movie took a more subtle approach to these things. And it has nothing to do with the fact that I'm a white male. Seriously, ladies and gentlemen, I look at these things from the most open perspective that I can possibly give. And whether it was whatever it was, I still found it to be very heavy-handed.
It was for sure.
I think some give and take. I mean, give us at least one likable white character or something.
When George Romero was doing his social commentary in his films, right? They weren't blatant. There were symbolisms for the political things that he was trying to convey in his film, right? Like, his zombie movies were never just like, here's the zombie movies. They were speaking to what was going on in our society at that time, to where this movie it's force feeding it down your throat.
It definitely
is. There's no hiding the subtext of what this film is trying to tell you.
I mean, Anthony goes to show his works of art that are going to be at this new display for this new art exhibit. And this character named Clive, this asshole, like, piece of shit, douchey white guy,
which sucks.
By the way, why did they name him Clive? Is that like a very disrespectful jab or something? Why would they do that?
Clive, because it's obviously an homage to Clive Barker, but it's like, why would you choose this character who's a piece of shit?
Dude,
to be the Clive Barker homage?
He's a total piece of shit. He's telling the Anthony character, I don't want the Anthony of 2 years ago. I want the Anthony of now, the great black hope of Chicago, telling him to dig into that history as he randomly slaps him on the chest like a douchebag. And, like, dude, instantly we're presented with the first white character in the movie who is deplorably obnoxious. I was like, to me, naming him Clive, I don't think that it was a coincidence, which kind of hurt a little bit, considering that Clive Barker wrote the short story in which Candyman was
the forbidden.
Yeah, I mean, so
dude. So I had a buddy on Facebook that Costas that hit me up, and he goes, didn't you find that disrespectful? And I said, well, yeah, but like, what exactly did you find offensive? And he goes, there's a line that that's in the movie that one of the critics said, or someone in the movie said, Clive had to die so you could be born. And he was like, do you feel like that was some kind of weird slap in the face for Clive Barker? And I was like, holy shit, I think that went over my head. Clive had to die so
that line actually was physically spoken. You are 100% correct. When Anthony goes to visit, I don't know why he honestly went to go visit her after she like literally pissed and shit all over his exhibit. It's hilarious the way that worked out or whatever, but it obviously moves the story along to kill more obnoxious, annoying white people. But they are the villains in this movie. And I mean, their dialogue shows what kind of people they are. You know, that is a great scene actually, in terms of transformation for Anthony into what he later becomes. Oh man, it's one of the best scenes ever, where he's picking at his hand, that body horror aspect, and he literally takes a chunk out of his hand, and
it was disgusting.
Dude, you know, she had earlier said on, like, when he's trying to tell her about the exhibit at the art show, it speaks all right of didactic cliche of gentrification. You kind of are the real pioneers. And he's like, excuse me?
Yeah, you're kind. Yeah.
And then she's like, oh, artists. So this makes Anthony get drunk and upset. And like, he gets fucking pissed off and calls the dude a goofy fuck, in which I thought was hilarious. And he like,
dude, it was funny as shit.
But I didn't understand like how he could have had that many beers to get that hammered. Is he a lightweight? He looks pretty jacked, bro. I'm just saying. He looks pretty jacked. I'm like, did they have that many beers there for free? I've been to plenty of art shows. Okay.
Well, what did he have for lunch, Justin?
That's true. Maybe he didn't eat the whole day because he was scared. Maybe because he was all nervous about it.
Very true.
Okay. Well, because he is jacked and he is ripped. So that's true. Very, very true. But we have to talk about some of the scenes that we love about this movie. And one of mine, and I know one of yours because we talked about it pre-show, was the scene that happens after this art show. It's one of the most visually stunning scenes in the entire movie. This is what horror fans like you and I go to see these movies for, is the kills. We want to see the goods, man. Give it to us good. Give it to us bloody. What did you think of...
Come on, do it now.
Come on, give it to me. Get to the chopper. Go slice the heads off. I mean, we were here in this art exhibit with this douchebag named Clive and his girlfriend, Jerrica, which, yes, looks like all of the girls I've dated in the past 15 years. Sorry, honey. Wearing a Joy Division shirt, which is hilarious because she says the line from one of the songs, and she's like obviously 20 and he's obviously like our age or my age, like 40 or something like that.
Yeah.
And we get most definitely, I think, the visually most impressive kill scene in the entire movie.
I appreciated this kill scene a lot because I felt like in this scene, you know, Candyman took his time and kind of fucking with the Clive character before just a lot of time in the Candyman movies. It's just, he'll appear behind someone and then all of a sudden, you know, hook into stomach or back. Done. Right? This one, I mean, he was levitating around the fucking room.
Dude,
you know,
that visual.
Oh, man. Oh, it was fucking creepy. But just so our listeners know, you know, obviously we're getting into spoiler territory. You guys should have all gone and been a part of this box office smash at this point. So, just so the listeners know, is unlike in the original Candyman films, the Candyman, when he appears, you can only see him in the reflection of mirrors. You cannot see him just in front of the fucking characters all willy-nilly. He's in the reflection of the mirrors. There are, you know, different mirrors and things around this art exhibit, so you can see multiple different shots of him. But man, him floating and then him taking his hook hand and slashing some of the screens that are in the background and things, like, I loved it. The best thing that I can compare it to is the Tina death scene from A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Couldn't agree more. They definitely went there in terms of trying to make it iconic. Obviously, like you said earlier, very well put, that this movie's different from the original because they're giving us very unlikable characters where we want to see them die. I don't know about Jerrica. She's just got green hair and she's wearing a Joy Division shirt.
She seemed nice.
I would probably have a drink with her and tell her, you're too young. That's fine. Just saying. But he says, she wants to do the Candyman thing against the mirror. And he's like, I don't want you to die tonight. At least not until we fuck. So not only is dude a giant douchebag piece of shit, but he also admits to wanting to fuck dead people. Yeah,
that's true. He does.
But I love the introduction to the scene, Jeremy, because we see the bee buzzing around, and then juxtaposed to that is we see Anthony in front of the mirror at home, like literally sitting there sulking with his beanie on, like dark eyes staring into nothingness, and the beginning of madness. I think that's the greatest thing about this movie is the visuals really connecting with the violence. We get the hook around the neck, the blood spraying like a fountain out of Jerica's neck. Fantastical practical gore. The shot of Candyman standing in silhouette, then ripping through the art scenery, the screen, was jaw-dropping. That levitation, like you said, and then dragging that piece of shit named Clive as he's trying to leave his girlfriend, the girl he was just trying to bang, in front of the display, and splat, he's gone. Dude, I think, personally, my favorite scene in the entire movie.
Yeah, it was great. Wasn't my favorite kill in the movie, but I definitely I think it was.
I'll be interested to hear your favorite then.
Yeah, I think it was a strong first kill for sure, and like I said, it was like just like the Nightmare on Elm Street Tina scene. But like, imagine in that scene if there was a mirror and you could see Freddy in the mirror. Like that's the difference, right? Is that you could see glimpses of the Candyman, but I kind of dig that. A lot of people are fucking mad about that.
Really?
Like, why wasn't... Yeah, oh yeah, dude. I've read a ton of stuff from horror fans on social media that they're like, well, why wasn't the Candyman just there? Like, why did he have to only be shown in the mirrors? Like, that's not how the other films were. And, I mean, I kind of understand that, but I loved it, man, because to me, it's the Jaws effect, right? It's almost scarier what you can't see sometimes, and I feel like they showed just enough of the Candyman that I was still satisfied. If it was just straight invisible boogeyman, boogie woogie woogie, just fucking killing people on screen, then yeah, at some point I'd go, well, this is fucking boring. I'm just seeing like blood going flying and I'm not seeing the killer. But the fact that you see this version of Candyman, which I'll elaborate on what I mean by this version of Candyman later, it was enough for me and I was satisfied with it. So, as you stated, you know, Anthony's at home and he's sulking in the mirror and a descent into madness. Something has happened, right? And it was almost like after the events of what happened to Sherman Fields in the 70s and then what happened with the Daniel Robitaille Candyman in the 90s, the Candyman had kind of died because people stopped saying his name.
It's all about like how that legend, when it's not talked about, it's kind of dead and buried until people start talking about it again. When people start talking about it again, it's brought back to life.
Yep. Anthony literally resurrected the Candyman by his art exhibit. I mean, he got people saying his name again. I mean, there's even a young girl that is at the art event with her mother that then goes to high school, and you know, there's a later scene that takes place in high school of the kids that the whole way they know about the Candyman myth is because Anthony's art exhibit, which I think that's pretty interesting as well. But
because I mean, you have to think about it. Who would be the most invested in something like this? When we were kids, you said it earlier on in the episode, when we were kids, the whole Bloody Mary thing for me, before I even knew about Candyman, you know, say the name in the mirror 5 times and turn around and look in the mirror. Who else but a bunch of dumb, white, rich teenagers, again, in this movie, to do this? And that line is actually spoken. Who would do that about summoning Candyman? And the next scene is literally a bunch of white teenage girls who took the pamphlet at the art show, to summon him. And it obviously portrays bullying in this scene. A black girl with, by the way, a fucking super rad Bad Brains patch on her backpack.
I noticed that.
How dare you fuck with someone that likes Bad Brains?
And that brings me back to what I said earlier about the people in this movie. When they die, they kind of fucking deserve to die, unlike the original. It didn't matter who you were in the original. If you were an obstacle in front of the Candyman's victim, you were getting murdered.
I mean, Jeremy, but literally one of the girls in this scene says, wait, I forgot my vape. And then I instantly said, I hope she dies the most brutal fucking death for saying that. She had like her head shaved with like one earring. I'm like, girl, seriously?
They were trying to feed us the fact that she's a lesbian. She mentioned vaginas being nice and cuddly in one of her lines of dialogue.
Good. And let's have inclusion, please. Let's kill everybody, not just straight white men. Let's kill everyone equally, right?
Everyone. So, you know, this African American high schooler comes into the bathroom, and all of these white girls like are giving her a bunch of shit and like kicking and punching the door of the stall that she goes into, and she has her headphones on because she's just trying to escape all the bullshit that she has to deal with day in and day out. But these girls, they say Candyman in the mirror.
Jeremy, that shot, dude, you know what I'm talking about. From underneath the stalls of the blood dripping, just like
I loved it.
Liquidy thick goo.
Oh, I loved it, dude.
Beyond
I
impressive,
loved it.
man.
A lot, but you know, again, this movie is really, I feel like it's kind of putting horror fans, splitting them right down the middle, because I feel like half of the people that saw this movie like fucking loved it and got what they wanted out of it, and I feel like the other half were just so busy and consumed with trying to compare it to the original that they fucking hated it. So there was a lot of hate for this scene too, because they're like, you didn't even fucking see the Candyman, and I'm like, well, you did in the compact mirror on the floor.
Which was for a visual, I thought was very interesting to do.
Creepy.
Yeah.
It was creepy as shit, man. But you know, the people in this movie, when they die, they fucking deserve it, man. They deserve it, and I dug that. So let's jump to when Anthony, you know, he goes to Cabrini Greens, and you know what's left of the original Cabrini Greens. There's literally just one segment of Cabrini Greens that is not gentrified at this point, and he goes and he's taking pictures of it, and he's documenting it when he runs into the adult William Burke, who was the little boy from the very first scene in the movie.
Yeah, and this is how we get the visual physical presentation of Candyman, like presented to us in these very interesting puppet scenes. A very artistic way of presenting the story, which I thought was fantastic.
I loved it.
It was very, very well done. I really liked it because it's how the movie started. It's how the movie ended. And I thought that was a really cool visual interpretation of how to tell this story. And this is what like kind of gets him into the mouth of madness, if you will, like throughout the whole movie. And as the movie pushes forward, this is what causes his obsession with this myth. And then, of course, as we know, shit hits the fan.
Well, I have to ask you. So he gets stung by a bee when he's taking pictures of Cabrini Greens.
That's right.
So that is really what starts his literal transformation into madness and potentially into becoming something much more than himself.
I was bitten by the bug. It's literally a visual interpretation of that saying, like, you know, in terms of like you're researching something or you're interested in a certain subject. People say that, oh, you were bitten by the bug, and here it's quite literal. You know, you have the bee flying up, and there it is.
Stings him, and so that's what starts his transformation. So this is a new approach to the Candyman mythos, is the fact that he gets stung by this bee, and it starts to transform him. Like, what do you think the reasoning behind their decision to do this was? Was it that he flew too close to the sun, that he was so obsessed with the Candyman mythos that he starts to become part of the mythos? Like, I mean, it's strange for me. Yeah, you know, we'll get to it later. His connection to the Candyman, but
well, honestly,
for me,
I mean, I feel like, Jeremy, to answer that question, it's just a reference to the same way Helen was so obsessed with the story in the original film. And how
she wouldn't let it go. Yeah.
She just got so connected to it and so obsessed with it that eventually it led her down this super dark claustrophobic tube of darkness, of this terrifying imagery, this terrifying urban legend. We see it literally here. I mean, there's a scene here when Anthony's starting to begin his physical progression, you know, this transformation, if you will, into what he's going to become by the end of this movie. And it's this claustrophobic tube with rain around it. And you're like, oh shit, dude. Like, that's one of the things that I have a little bit of a problem with the movie, is that it's so literal all the time. But I also understand the audience that they're really trying to present to. It's just more of the same. They're just trying to convey the same themes in a different, more updated way. Obsession.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the bee sting, I mean, it starts to rot his hand. It looks like his hand was like in a fucking bonfire, like it's charred almost. It's infected.
Wouldn't you be be picking at that shit if it looked like it? I know I would.
I would have been picking to a hospital.
Well, he eventually goes after like almost
eventually,
half his body.
like,
but
yeah, dude,
I'd be picking at that shit too, like ripping. I'd probably be biting at that shit when I'm sleeping and eating pieces off of it.
It was very David Cronenberg, The Fly.
Oh, 100%, 100%.
Fucking, it was disgusting to her. Like there were points where he was literally picking at it and the skin was peeling, and people in the audience, you could hear them just go, oh.
Which I love. I love when you hit a nerve. I mean, there's the scene at the end of the movie while we're getting there, where there's like literally a limb removed, and you don't see that in modern horror.
That was a good one.
You really don't. You don't see that very
not in
often
mainstream horror anymore. No,
and you see blood just pouring out, and you see like a practical physical prop arm just falling off, and a hook being shoved in. I think, as we get to the end of this review here, Jeremy, I think the first act is extremely strong in this movie, whether I really love the characters or not. And the second act follows pretty solid. I mean, I think it's also very good. The third act for me is where the movie starts to fail, I guess, in terms of like where it starts to fall apart a little bit, and we started this review in this whole episode in saying that this is Nia DaCosta's film, but Jordan Peele did have his hand in the screenplay.
There were 3 writers.
You
are correct.
There were. But when you look at what Jordan Peele has accomplished in the last 5 or 6 years, Get Out is a masterpiece. It's an outright classic. Us almost got there, except for the third act, also failed to portray what he really wanted to envision with what that movie was supposed to be. We get another case of that here, I feel like, where there's a lot of things that are rushed, thrown together, not much impact, and it kind of leaves, at least me, as an audience member, being like, okay, you set it up right, you didn't really know what to do with it at the end of the story. So I don't know if you feel the same way as I do, but it just felt like a little bit like of a lackluster ending.
Yeah, I mean, the third act, I agree with you 100%. I didn't hate the third act, but there were parts of the third act that I did hate. Not as a whole again, but there were parts of it that I did hate for sure. I mean, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Vanessa Williams coming back as Anne Marie McCoy from the original film.
One of the best scenes. One of the best scenes in the movie.
Oh, so impactful to where it. The fact that they brought her back and she's a legacy character to this franchise. I'm glad she's there, and she is one of the absolute best scenes of this entire movie. Like, dude, I love the part when he finally goes to visit his mom, and he finds out, because he had no idea, that the baby from the 1992 Candyman that Candyman steals and is going to take into the bonfire that Helen Lyle goes after, he ends up finding out that Anthony finds out that he was the baby that the Candyman stole, and that Helen Lyle saved him, which he had absolutely no idea of before. And so he goes to confront his mom, Anne Marie McCoy, and he says, you never told me. And she's like, and you could tell that she knows that he figured it out. And he says, Candyman, and my favorite, definitely my favorite line in the movie. She claps, she goes, no.
It's been that GIF that's been.
Don't say that.
Everyone's using that GIF on Twitter. That whole.
It's so good. It's. No, don't say that.
But
once I love that.
Once you get to that point in the movie and you connect those dots, like I remember talking to you about this pre-show a few days ago, that I immediately knew that's where it was going. Like, I think
for
a
sure.
quarter of the way through, you're like, oh,
yeah.
In the trailer, when you look at the age bracket and everything and where they're going with it, that's what it is. But I think for the general moviegoer, it probably drops like a bomb. Because when I saw it the first time, people went, ooh, whoa, when that line was mentioned that he is the baby that was stolen in the first movie.
So to me, that's such an important part and element of Candyman 2021 is that connection to the original film, right? Which also in and of itself becomes such a hindrance, in my opinion, because there were so many fucking opportunities that they could have done with connecting those dots, right? You know, it could have been a thing where the Candyman, when he stole Anthony when Anthony was a child, that the Candyman literally imprinted himself on Anthony, and then it was Anthony's destiny to come back to Cabrini Greens and find him and essentially resurrect the Candyman legacy, and then potentially join the Candyman fleet, right? And which is a weird thing, because guess what? There's not just one Candyman. There's not just Daniel Robitaille.
There's multiple.
Right?
There's more than one Candyman.
Yep. Sherman Fields is a Candyman. So Daniel Robitaille is a Candyman. There is a blurred face Candyman that they don't really discuss a whole lot. I know in the original script there was a little bit more information on him. And then now Anthony has literally, after the bee sting, started his descent into becoming a Candyman, right? So there's so many I like the fact that there are multiple Candymen, because it's interesting.
Which, by the way,
different.
Jeremy, if we were trying to be careful about saying it more than 5 times, we've each said it like 100 times in this review, so we're both fucking doomed. So, ladies and gentlemen, hopefully you'll be able to hear this review. Like, hopefully someone will take it after we die and actually edit it and present it to you as listeners, because, oh, there's my puppy who's falling asleep.
Hi, puppy!
Well,
dude, your dog's getting big, man.
He's getting like be a giant. But yeah, I mean, so
dude, they could have done so many fucking things with that, but instead they kind of shoehorn in like, oh, he's the baby from the first one, but then they don't do anything tying it all together, right? At least I don't feel like they did enough for it. And then I'm going to go ahead and talk about it now, man. The cat is coming out the bag, man.
Let that shit out. Yeah.
Yeah!
Yeah!
Who invited Rob Zombie on the podcast? He's like, yeah! Candyman, what you want?
Hey, yeah! It's the
Candyman! So, dude, Coleman Domingo is William Burke. I said earlier in the review that I fucking loved this guy. I loved his character. I thought he was fantastic. Oh, man, I cannot help myself but to compare him to Dr. Sartain from Halloween 2018.
Shit, here we go. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, when you hear that name mentioned, you know where it's going. You know where it's going.
So, Dr. Sartain in Halloween 2018, right, he was Michael's psychiatrist after Dr. Loomis, and up until a point in the movie, he was likable, he was kind of funny in parts, and it seemed like he was just a guy doing his job.
Oh, you're the new Loomis.
What do you mean? I am calm. Whatever his line was, he's so funny, dude. He's so funny. But left field in the third act, it was like the writers of Halloween 2018, David Gordon Green and
Danny McBride, yeah.
Yeah, it's like they were like, okay, well, how do we get Michael and Laurie back together? And they're like, fuck, we'll take the psychiatrist, and all of a sudden left field will make it to where he's obsessed with Michael Myers and bringing Laurie and him together. And it was just so left field that one of the biggest complaints that fans have about Halloween 2018 is that they're like, dude, it's so fucking dumb. There's 100 other ways that you could have gotten Michael and Laurie back together.
But from my perspective, I don't give a fuck how you're going to get them there. I'm able to ignore that 5-minute portion of the movie just to get him there. Whereas here, it feels like when you find out that Burke is like kind of like puppeteering this entire thing, you're like, oh man, this guy's been nice the entire movie. He's been like telling the story and helping. And now he's like, he's got Brianna all tied up and everything. And I knew the baby would come back. And I'm like, okay. Honestly,
to me, it didn't make sense.
No,
to me, it didn't
make sense at all. And that's what really fails for me in terms of the movie overall, because like I said, I think the first act is very strong. The second act is pretty good. That descent into madness, like as we saw in the original movie. But the third act kind of just, it's jumbled, it's thrown together. And then, of course, I had to say earlier on, the Brianna character, played by Tiana Paris, she's a good actress, but I didn't really like her very much. I didn't really care for her that much. I mean, sure, Anthony throws some mirrors at her, when he's trying to protect her. And of course, what woman wouldn't walk away from that when a guy's throwing fucking mirrors in a room? Like, yo, this guy's motherfucking crazy. But at the same time, I didn't really care for her character. So there are some things shoehorned in with that character too, like her dad killing himself, Troy talking about how she can't keep running away from that forever, and connecting the two things and finding damaged men. And I was like, well, that's kind of like a half-assed portrayal of whatever this character is supposed to be, because I don't care enough about that character.
You can tell that there was a draft of that script somewhere where that was a much bigger part, man.
Much
and
bigger
it got
character,
whittled down.
Yeah, way more developed, way better written, because
it was unnecessary in this version, for sure.
I mean, honestly, you should have just had her be his girlfriend. And I hate saying that because she's a female character in a female-directed movie, but at the same time, like, why not give her a bigger role? Make the movie like I always say this all the time, Jeremy, and you're going to hear me say this on the show all the time. Make the movie 10 minutes longer. 5 minutes longer, give her some development, give me something to care about with her character, because by the end of this movie, when she's kidnapped and she's in the nitty gritty, in the shit here, I don't care about her living or dying. The only thing that she really does that matters, that has any full impact to the end of this movie, is that she says the name 5 times and finally unleashes him after, again, she viciously stabs Burke to death with the same pen that we saw earlier writing Anthony's notes, that is foreshadowed because it's a close-up of said pen. And when the white cops open fire, it says a lot about her movements, though, and her performance. So I'll give her that much in this scene, because before doing anything else, she knows she's an African-American woman, and she ducks. She hides.
Yeah. I mean, dude, William Burke, again, before we getting into him getting stabbed to death, I mean, he decides that Candyman, like you said earlier, is a necessary evil to fight back against police brutality, right? Which I think is
against the white takeover, gentrification, the whole thing.
I think that's fucking genius. But what I don't like is that what I don't like is that he's trying to create a forced narrative. Well, the narrative's already there. Anthony's already becoming the Candyman. He's already into his descent into madness, into joining the League of Candymen, right? So it could have been a situation where they could have used William Cole to try to save Brianna. Rather than him abducting Brianna, he could have been a hero, because up until this point, he was kind of, that could have been his path, is that he could have shown up after Anthony goes insane, abducts Brianna. Anthony could have, you mentioned earlier about, there's a sawing off of a limb in a movie that we don't typically see stuff like that very much in mainstream horror anymore. So
almost never.
William Burke saws off Anthony's hand and jams a hook into his stub and all these things, but he's creating a false narrative, and he even calls the cops, and he's like, he's here, the guy that committed all the murders that happened throughout the film is here, come to this address, because he wants the police to show up, and he wants the police to kill Anthony, and he wants Anthony to come back as a Candyman to fight back against police brutality. None of it makes fucking sense. To me, it was lazy writing in the third act. They could have avoided all of that, man.
Yeah, 100%.
That's where it falls apart for me. So I agree with you 100% that the third act is womp womp.
Yeah, and we're gonna close this out real quick here. When those cops open fire, I mean, that's the end of the movie.
They kill Anthony.
Well, there's supposed to be a big payoff here. And we just see a bunch of white cops getting slashed at, which could have been cool if it was portrayed a little bit better, if it was developed better visually. I don't know. Like, she's sitting in the car and we're seeing it from a bird's eye view, if you will, when her in the back seat of the police car or whatever, the SUV, and they're getting slashed and everything. You're like, okay, cool. So Burke's gone. Anthony's there. She says the name 5 times. And we get a very evil white cop who's like, what the fuck is that? He gives her 2 options, which, from someone, Jeremy, that watches so many true crime shows and knows true crime and knows the history of how these things work, 100%, this is something that happens all the time where cops are dirty and they're just trying to get their job done real quick. And I'll give you these 2 options, and either of those options are going to incriminate you. And all she does is, let me look in the mirror. I'll tell you anything you want to know. She says the name 5 times. We see all these cops get slaughtered. I am the writing of the walls, the sweet smell of blood, the buzz that echoes the alleyways. And then we see what I would consider, personally, Jeremy, one of the most disrespectful moments of the movie. Now, I saw a lot of fans coming out and saying this is the moment that made them excited. For me, not so much. Was not necessary. See, for example, ladies and gentlemen, you've seen the movie. You know what I'm talking about. This isn't Nick Castle, right? Who is in a mask and coveralls. This is not like a cool moment where you're like, oh, cool, that's a cameo. Like, he's in the scene for 1 second. This is the man that physically embodied and created the character as we know today. Like, literally, when you say the name, you think of one person, a performance. And we get him in a split second, and then fade to black, the movie ends. Tell everyone.
Tell everyone.
That's right. So, Jeremy, you tell me, man. I mean, we're horror fans, man. We live this shit every day. Was that a respectful way in terms of, like, you know, showing the legacy of what he created with this character?
Yeah, so that was not initially what was supposed to be. The only cameo that Tony Todd was supposed to have in the entire film, and in the test screenings, this is exactly what they got, was at the very end when Anthony's version of the Candyman is walking around the car. In the reflection as he passes by was the reflection of all the different Candymen, right? You got the blurred face Candyman, you got Tony Todd's Candyman, you got Daniel Robitaille, you got Sherman Fields, and that split second reflection of Tony Todd in the window was supposed to be his only cameo in the entire film. And I know for a fact that the test screening audience afterwards, they said, well, what did you think? In the first cut of the movie, there was hardly any Candyman in the film whatsoever.
I know for a fact as well, and we're not going to name drop or anything like that, but both of us were kind of privy to some information based on a Hollywood early screening of the movie, in which we were told some information, what was this, like 2 years ago, dude?
Dude, it was it was probably close to a year, if not longer.
And obviously, we both know after watching this movie that reshoots happened, which is a normal thing for movies. Reshoots are a normal thing for almost every single movie they have in almost literally every single movie. So
they CGI'd Tony Todd's fucking face. So in the original ending of the movie, it was supposed to be, what I'm assuming, Anthony turns around and faces Brianna. Now he's full on. He is the Candyman.
He's the Candyman, right?
And what I'm imagining is that,
yeah,
yes, what I'm imagining is that she probably was like, Anthony, and he was like, tell everyone. And then that was going to be the ending, right?
And how great would that have been?
So,
I mean, seriously, though, that would have been a perfect ending. Why even? This is my question here. And it did frustrate me. It angered me. Because I saw this movie twice. I already mentioned it to you.
Yep.
Because I really wanted to like this movie more than I did. I mean, obviously, we praised a lot of what the movie developed and what it showed and what we got to see from it. But this, to me, was unnecessary. I mean, either give him a bigger part, knowing how big of a part of the legacy he is, or don't give him anything.
Yep.
You know, it was so last minute, like a last ditch effort to like really.
They literally CGI'd his. They literally CGI'd his face on, I assume, Yaya's body, and it was tell everyone, and that was all. But the reason we got that is because apparently in the test screenings they were like, dude, how come you couldn't have given Tony Todd more to do? So somewhere, someone in the studio was like, all right, we got to figure something else out. So they probably looked at what they had and were like, what can we do in post to make people happy? And so they probably had Tony Todd come in, and he, I'm sure they got him on camera and
then did the voiceover.
Tell everyone, and then they just took his face and slapped it on Yaya's body.
How much you think they paid him for that? Here's $5,000.
No, they were like, we've got hot dogs.
Dude, literally, we're here. That table out back, it's full of 12-inch gourmet hot dogs.
all the toppings you want. Literally all of them. Just one line.
All the toppings.
Just one line. And just stand in front of the camera. We'll CG it. You don't have to do anything else. We'll limo you back to your hotel. Fine.
Or are we talking 7-Eleven or Nathan's Hot Dogs? I don't know why I sounded more like the Wishmaster than fucking Tony Todd.
Listen, hey, well, he's in Wishmaster, right? So
that's true.
There it is.
As you
but
wish.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get to the end of this Fresh Frights review. Trash it or treasure it. Jeremy, to you first. Here it is.
All right. You know, I really loved a lot of this movie. It fell apart for me in the third act, but it wasn't so devastating that I walked away hating the movie. Like, I just said, okay, like, I didn't particularly care for this part, but otherwise I really enjoyed this movie. I'm anxious to see it again. And I was thoroughly entertained, and I had a great time with this movie, and I loved a lot of the new themes and the mythos that was added. You know, we know for a fact that this movie has already made a bunch of money. It's made its budget back, so we know we're going to get a sequel. So I cannot wait to see what the sequel is, and that's from a guy that doesn't particularly like the Candyman franchise. Sequel. So that's from a guy that doesn't particularly like the Candyman franchise, and I'm saying that I can't wait for the next one. So I think that ultimately this film delivered what it was supposed to, and I'm gonna have to say, man, I hate to be the guy that treasures everything, but I'm sure at some point I'm gonna trash something. But
one day, dude, we'll pick the right one, right?
One day, I'm gonna treasure this because I want to see it again, man, and I loved it, and you know I loved most of it. I'll say that I loved most of it, and I want a sequel, man. So how could I trash something that I want a sequel to? So well, I treasure it.
I can answer that question for you very easily because I do want a sequel as well. But I'm going to trash it. I'm not putting this one on my shelf. I have to champion the movie, though. I mean, in terms of who was behind it, how much effort went into it, the team that was able to make this movie possible, yes. I treasure you, but the movie itself, too jumbled for me. Great.
There's a lot of it that you liked.
Yeah, I mean,
but it falls flat.
Yeah, I mean, like as a film, it doesn't completely get there for me, and I have to learn to do this new rating scale because I created it, and usually right now with the normal rating scale, this would probably be my lowest passing rating, but no, this is Brain Stew, and I want to make this harder for everybody, and that's the whole fun of it. So yeah, for me, it's going to be a trash it. I am not going to buy this movie. It's not going to be on my shelf, but I do appreciate so much of what went into it. I appreciate what it's doing for the horror genre. I appreciate the talents that were behind this movie. Yes, but you didn't quite get it there. And what frustrates me the most, Jeremy, and I'm sure you can agree with me, is the framework was there. The bones were there for a much, much better movie. Had that third act really knocked it out of the park, I'd be sitting here literally cumming my fucking pants and actually probably all over my hands, and you'd see it on my face because I'd be not paying attention and wiping it like this as I drank this piece of shit Sheets pumpkin. Seriously, Sheets, don't make the pumpkin pie soda again. You made a mistake. Change it. Do something with it. But I mean, the bones were there. There were so many good things. Solid performances. Make your characters more likable next time. I mean, the fact that they're pretentious art people, I get it. I'm a graphic designer. My wife's a graphic designer. I've been in that circle so many times in my life, but make them a little bit more likable, a little more relatable. There it is. You know, it's just really simple things you could slightly change and make a much better movie. And add 10 to 15 minutes onto the movie and give more development for both of our main characters, Anthony and Brianna, because there's so much more that we could have seen from them, and Burke as well. But the visuals were perfect. The kills were awesome. But also, let's face it, Jeremy, and I'm going to ask you this now before we close up the show. I didn't think this movie was scary at all. We watched The Night House last week and reviewed that, and I thought that movie was terrifying.
It was, I will say this, Candyman was creepy, but it was not scary. It had a creepy atmosphere, some creepy imagery. Put it this way, dude. Sherman Fields is nightmare fuel.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Every time you see Anthony looking in the mirror and seeing him back, when he's at that art critic's apartment and he's looking in the mirror and she's coming out from the bathroom. Was she trying to like fuck him or something in that scene? Like, I'm going to come in changing something more comfortable. When she says I'm going to the bathroom, he's like, now is as good a time as ever. I'm like, wait, why is he saying that? Does she have to take like a giant dump or something? I don't know. When you see him in the background, it's definitely nightmare fuel, but overall the movie was not scary. Great atmosphere, great visuals. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. I trashed it. Jeremy once again treasured it, but that is it for this episode of Brain Stew, a Fresh Frights review. Thank you so much for listening. Seriously, we love you beyond words for taking the time to listen to us jabber on about movies. And if you like what you hear, we would literally get down on our knees and pray to you and thank you for forgiveness, for leaving us a 5-star iTunes review. Every single one of those that we get helps us reach more amazing listeners like yourself. Tell everyone about us. Seriously. Post about us.
Tell everyone.
There it is. You know, when you're listening to us, if you're on Instagram, post that shit in your story. If you're on Twitter, tag us. That's literally the way to do it in terms of getting our name out there. We're under the Epic Film Guys banner, but we are officially Brain Stew. So thank you so much for listening. We really greatly appreciate it. And all of our reviews will be available on every single platform, Spotify, iTunes, you name it. We're literally everywhere. But, you know, that's the way it is. Until next time, Jeremy, you did a guest spot recently on Kellen's Petty Talk Show.
I did. It was so much fucking fun. I've known Kellen for years, and I love his podcast. So when he invited me on, we had an absolute blast.
And you talked about all of the Candyman movies, right?
All of the Candyman movies. So definitely go over and check out Kellen's Petty Talk Show and check out that Candyman franchise review.
I'm going to put the link to that in the show notes. So if you're looking at this on our official site, you're going to see that link. So go and check that out. And Jeremy, you got to get in there in our group, man, and formally introduce yourself.
I definitely will. I had a busy weekend, but yeah, that post is definitely coming. I'd love to introduce myself properly to the Epic Film Guys, fanatics, and of course, new fans of Brain Stew!
Yeah, Brain Stew, baby. So until next time, I'm Justin.
And I am Jeremy.
And remember to
keep it creepy.
Oh, yeah, baby.
Brain Stew!